Hello, I'm Joni Casey, President and CEO of IANA. Over the last year and a half, the intermodal supply chain has been faced with unprecedented volume swings and challenges. In this video, IANA has gathered leading voices from the industry to share their thoughts on the business environment during and post-pandemic in terms of how their companies have adapted and what the rest of 2021 and the future holds. I hope their insight is beneficial. IANA membership provides you with a forum to interact with all of the intermodal stakeholders to identify and build consensus solutions to challenges facing our industry. Please visit intermodal.org to learn more about the benefits of belonging to the only organization that represents the combined interests of the intermodal freight transportation community.
Hey, I'm Gary Cornelius, Vice President of Business Development with TCW, based out of Nashville, Tennessee. We're an asset-based motor carrier serving several markets throughout the Southeast United States. I think one of the biggest standouts in what we're dealing with, or what we've dealt with in 2020, is having to go virtual. We're in an industry that is brick and mortar based, we're asset based, we're people based, yet we have always felt that we needed to come do that at our office. All of a sudden, in late March, we're faced with a challenge of how do we do that yet still protect our employees? And we're forced to go to a virtual platform and really start working remotely with the majority of our staff. Quite honestly, it was a little horrifying. We as an industry didn't think we could do it. At the end of the day, we've come away with a different concept on what we're capable of now and what the agility this taught us to use has enabled us to do moving forward, to the point that we'll probably have positions that no longer work in a brick and mortar location, but are able to perform their duties flawlessly and effectively in a remote environment. Through the organizations we're involved with and through these relationships and opportunities to network, we have longstanding relationships with not only our clients, but with the other partners that we operate with within the intermodal supply chain. What this enabled us to do was to go remotely very quickly and still be able to rely on those electronic communications and phone communication in the same way that we do. I think that's one of the beauties that we weren't really anticipating was, if you think about today's transportation business environment, we're already electronic. We're already functioning from an email platform, from an EDI platform, and virtually telephone calls. Very seldom are we face-to-face as we interact together on a load-by-load, move-by-move basis. The only challenge for us was to take those relationships and move them to a remote environment to where instead of using a phone on a desk, part of our network at the office, we're now using cellular, which has become just as easy. We've been preparing and trying to be agile enough to really address these changes. Oftentimes, the face-to-face environment that we were in, we all felt, whether it was us as a motor carrier or our clients or vendors, we felt it necessary. And I think everybody's coming away now with a feeling that, hey, we can do this from afar. We can do it remotely. We can do it electronically and still accomplish everything we need to accomplish in transacting business together. I think one of the other things, too, from a challenge from the industry standpoint, is commonality in information. Information has become very, very important in our industry. Unfortunately, our clients are adopting it much faster than we as an industry are. We deal with it on a daily basis, yet we deal with it in very proprietary funnels. There's not a commonality out there that really allows one platform. Us as a motor carrier, every port, every rail we service 7 Class 1 railroads. We service 6 port facilities. Each one of them has their own information platform, and they're unique. There's not a commonality that allows all of us to share the benefit of that information in one location. It's something that we talk about frequently in a lot of committee meetings within IANA. It's also something that we talk about how IANA can facilitate. And I think that's one of the big goals that IANA should have going forward, is how can we facilitate a common flow of information. And I think one of the biggest things we as IANA can do is align ourselves to make sure we're bringing good solutions together as supply chain partners, but then making sure they align with what our end user, the beneficial cargo owner, is looking for in the intermodal product.
Hi, I'm Jim Newsome. I'm the President and CEO of the South Carolina Ports Authority in Charleston. 2020 was a year like no other, really. I mean, we didn't have a playbook for a pandemic or what would be involved in terms of demand. Candidly, we all thought the worst, I would say. I mean, we saw the China shut down after Chinese New Year, and we then saw the Western world shut down, automotive plants shutting down, and we really didn't know what sort of consumption patterns we were having. So we were kind of shooting in the dark. We were very, very conservative about our forecasts, and we were pleasantly surprised. I think in a sense, we were dubbed an essential industry, the port industry and the international logistics supply chain industry. And then what we learned is that people, if they couldn't go on vacations and couldn't go to restaurants, they'd stay at home and buy things. So we saw an unanticipated amount of growth that we had to deal with on the fly. I think the major challenge going forward is really that we're going to see some capacity constraints in several parts of the supply chain. Not the ports. I don't think Southeast ports will see that, but certainly trucking, rail capacity, ship capacity, we're seeing that. A lot of constraints, which will take a lot more planning, being a lot more intentional to make the supply chain fluid. I don't think there's any way to overestimate the importance of networking, of relationships. I think it's something that has become a bit of a lost art in business today with all the bids and spreadsheets and impersonal ways of communicating. In my career, 40-something years in container shipping and ports, you get stuff done by relationships and through trust and integrity. You can't reduce everything to writing in an agreement. I would give two pieces of advice. One, don't just necessarily extrapolate what happened in 2020. Everybody's saying today that demand is just going to continue to grow and grow and grow. I don't know that I believe that. I think people that didn't take vacations in 2020 might take two in 2021 once they have a vaccine. I think demand will level off a bit. I do think people have to pay attention to capacity throughout the international supply chain, be it transload capacity, warehouse capacity, trucks, rail, ship capacity, and have to have a little longer term focus. I think we've got to have a view that's bigger than our own organization. We certainly do that in the type of operating ports we have in the Southeast here, where we invest a lot, we own and operate the port. And we just can't look at what's good for us. We have to look at what's good for the whole supply chain industry. So people have got to be a little more long-term minded, a little more strategic, and a little more willing to give and take, not just optimize their own world. IANA brings people together from the very nature of IANA, and certainly its board structure is that you have different modes represented on the board, different stakeholders, and so it creates an opportunity to interact. IANA is good at creating forums and basically an operational meeting, and its Intermodal Expo are good opportunities to interact. So I think IANA is a catalyst for the type of dialogue and exchange of views on things that hopefully makes the industry better.
Hello, my name is Tom Williams, and I lead the Consumer Products Business Group at BNSF Railway. Consumer Products represents our automotive, but importantly, our intermodal business. And intermodal is the largest segment of business at BNSF. And it's also where we see a tremendous amount of opportunity for growth in the future. So it's an exciting role for me to have, and I'm excited to lead this business group at BNSF. 2020 was very unique in terms of having to idle and then redeploy so many resources associated with the dip and then the recovery in volumes after the pandemic. For example, at BNSF, our low water mark in volume was 81,000 units for intermodal volume in the first part of April. And by December, we moved as many as 124,000 units in a single week. So that's a swing of more than 50% in just a few months. And so one of the big takeaways that I think we should all be very encouraged by is the North American intermodal network was very resilient in this face of this unprecedented volume volatility that we had to deal with. One of the things I'm most proud of was the employees that weren't able to work remotely, that were on the front lines. And in the first part of the pandemic, we're dealing with the movement of essential goods that were so important through those first few months. And then as consumer demand ramped up and keeping up with that just huge demand from our customers, I couldn't be more proud of my teammates at BNSF, especially those that were working out on the network day to day throughout this very dynamic year of 2020. Certainly, our marketing team and many of our employees adapted very quickly and became experts at things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and so forth. I think we were prepared on a number of fronts. I mean, first, when I think about our intermodal franchise, a commitment to long-term investment left us with the physical infrastructure that we needed when we needed to flex up toward the end of the year. And then from a commercial perspective, the long-term carrier partner alignments that we have, both on the international and the domestic side of our business, were certainly important as we've responded together to customer needs from the trough through the peak in December. Being an IANA board member is important. BNSF is the industry leader in intermodal, and we want to be very involved in our industry's association. And so certainly we have a history of leaders before me who have participated on IANA's board, and I'm certainly proud to be in the current state of time representing BNSF in our industry through IANA. Intermodal is really the ultimate team sport, and IANA has helped bringing all of the players together through a number of forums, the various committees and task forces to discuss industry issues, a tremendous number of networking opportunities, which have historically been in person, but more recently virtual. In the future, we hope in person again, where those member discussions take place, certainly bringing industry issues to the table. And then specifically, one of the things I'm excited about is exposure to students and younger people who are thinking about a career in this industry. And certainly there's a place where students through the Expo Forum have exposure to industry leaders, and we can start to look for that next generation of talent to come into our industry.